transsexual Nina Arsenault may be perceived as, quote, fake, but the 60 cosmetic surgeries that transformed her from an awkward man into a 36-24-40 bombshell are anything but. The Silicone Diaries, presented by the Buddies in Bad Time Theater, is a full, frank, and fierce exploration of the contradictions associated with the quest for beauty, balanced by an intimate and spiritual account of Nina's adventures in plastic surgery. I am very pleased to have Nina Arsenault live in studio. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me.
My pleasure. Let's start with that idea that it was an adventure in plastic surgery, because I mentioned 60 plastic surgeries.
Yeah, I know.
And adventure connotates sort of something that's fun, exciting, and I guess in some ways it must have been for you.
Well, I think it was probably more an adventure in terms of like a Greek. Like Homer. That's how I think of it. There was
an Odyssey.
Yeah, there was pleasure and pain and ups and downs, highs, lows, and hilarious moments. And
how did you decide to put together this as a one-woman show? I mean, I know that you've used to write articles, did columns for Fab magazine,
That's right.
And you sort of chronicled your whole journey. When did it occur to you to sort of present it as a theater piece, a one-woman show?
Stephen Tobias from the St. John Theatre Company out in New Brunswick, he actually commissioned me to turn those stories into a one-person show, and I did the show out in New Brunswick last August. And then it was very well received, and I worked with Brendan on it, and Buddies in Bad Times became interested in it. But I have spent the last 9 months revamping the show.
Interesting that it would someone from New Brunswick would want to be the first person to sort of commission the show. You don't necessarily think of, New Brunswick as being necessarily that, I don't know, forward thinking or it tends to.
Well, I found audiences there very sophisticated.
Really?
In St. John, New Brunswick, yeah. And at the time, I had to cut this monologue from my play, but at the time, one of the monologues was about my decision to be surgically castrated. Mm-hmm. To annihilate testosterone in my body, but to keep my penis. And I thought that was really avant-garde gender politics, to ask people in St. John to have, but I always had a lot of fun doing that monologue, and people really responded to it. I told the story with humor.
Well, what drew me towards the Silicone Diaries was just that how many contradictions are there inherently, right? And of course, when you choose to have cosmetic surgery, I mean, there's so much choice, right?
Yes.
Like you get to decide what you're going to essentially look like, right? And just I guess in that response being, that you're quote unquote fake or what is fake. I mean, how do you respond to that title or that name, or what does fake mean to you? Because I think that's one of the things you address in this play.
Well, I just tell people that my hair is fake and I have fake body parts, but everything else I just try to keep as real as possible, as often as possible.
When you decided that you were going to begin this transition, that when you came to terms with who you were,
yeah,
how did you begin to construct the woman that you wanted to be, or what that would mean to you, and what that would look like to you personally?
Well, first I just started to have cosmetic surgery and take hormones just to look like a woman. And I'd had some work done, and I'd had a lot of work done at that point, cosmetically, but it was quite conservative in the way that it wasn't really visible as plastic surgery. But because I only went that far with the surgery, and that's what they like to do in North America. They don't want you to look cosmeticized. But it meant that my face and body had a lot of reminiscences of my maleness that I wasn't comfortable with. So I just decided I was going to do really unreasonable things with plastic surgery, things that doctors here wouldn't do. And
unreasonable seems like such a judgment.
Well, I hear what you're saying, but I think that I had 60 plastic surgeries and procedures. So for me to try to normalize that for you, to try to be like, that was just me being who I wanted to be, I think I would be insulting your intelligence. I think I did 60 plastic surgeries and procedures, and I have been absolutely unreasonable about what I've wanted to do with my body and beauty. But that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be unreasonable.
I imagine that you'd be quite the role model for someone else thinking of transitioning or getting cosmetic surgery or deciding in what they want to look like on the outside. I mean, do people approach you sort of wanting to talk to you about that?
Sometimes they do, yeah. I always tell girls to become the woman that they want to be, not to emulate me.
That along the way you do challenge our own idea, this patriarchal idea of beauty and what a woman, that Barbie-esque style beauty. I was just reading in the press release this morning. As I was getting the show ready. There's some fascinating stories here that you've incorporated. This crying game style collision with Tommy Lee. I would be remiss if I didn't get you to recount the story.
Well, I can't tell the story totally because that's one of the stories in my show that a lot of people want to hear. I've never spoken about it publicly, but there was one night in Ultra Supper Club in 2006 where Tommy Lee tried to pick me up, the former Mr. Pamela Anderson. And it was
that's brilliant.
It was actually one of the I would say that it was one of the wildest, craziest, most insane psychedelic nights of my life.
Really?
Yeah, but it's not what you think it is.
No. I just think it's funny to get I can just picture the whole thing playing out. Actually.
Oh, he's a great guy too.
Yeah. How have audiences responded to in terms of your because you're fairly militant about this. Not militant, but you hold fast to your own path, and you've probably taken some heat,
sure,
possibly from others in the community, you'd say.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the heat that you've taken, and how do you stay true to your own vision, your own quest?
Well, I guess it depends on what heat that you're talking about that I've taken.
Well, in that you do sort of challenge the constructs of what it takes to be. I mean, the plastic surgeries that you've had, for example, that are not traditional and that are not recommended.
Well, I think that I have the right to do whatever I want to with my body, and I have the right to seek pleasure. And sometimes when people disagree with what I've done out of perhaps out of what they call their politics, a lot of times they take great issue with that because I think as a woman and as a modern woman and as a feminist, I have every right to seek out pleasure wherever and however I want to. And pleasure is something that we never talk about in politics.
Yeah, I guess that's
We
true.
always talk about what's the right thing to do.
Well, how have you managed to? Because the show does sort of deconstruct the ideal of beauty, but at the same time, it's sort of it's also about your quest to achieve your own sense of beauty, which seems slightly a bit of a dichotomy, no?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It is. It's a paradox. Mm-hmm.
And so how do you manage to make that case? And I mean, I'm not asking you to do it here. I certainly don't want to take anything away from.
Well, let me say this. I don't so much have a case to make about beauty that I'm making a political statement about beauty with the play. The play is my adventures through trying to achieve inner and outer beauty. But I do have a mantra that I repeat to myself over and over about beauty. But I don't want to say what it is because I give it away it's the last line of the play. But I will say this, it encompasses both pleasure and pain. It's that big for me.
Mm-hmm.